This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now. I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent. When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology, and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless. Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I am very lucky today. And I always start with that, but it's nice to have a friend of mine on the podcast, a friendly face for the morning. So, Emmanuel from Kaatch. How you doing, my friend? Are you well?
Yeah, very good, very good. Happy to be here, Alex. It's good.
Good, yeah. And we see you after your launch of your exciting new venture. So, let's start with that then. Obviously, customary. Kaatch is a little bit of a different business for us as well, because you're kind of in my space. I don't think we're going to butt heads. I don't think we're going to fully compete. But yeah, let's explain to the good people out there what Kaatch is and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's funny that you talk about competition. I think it's hard to compete with you. You look like you're on Premier League. So I'm still like championship, and in fact, what Kaatch is really about collaboration anyway. So just to understand Kaatch. People always ask us to really define what we do. Are we a marketplace? Are we X, Y, Z? I think the best way to introduce Kaatch is really a solution to fight unemployment and a solution to support organizations that care about their people as well. So we do a bunch of services into human resources. So it goes from supporting a company to find the right employees, and as well that helping companies on offboarding, for example, when an employee has to leave and what do you do, how do you support them? But also on fighting unemployment, we're also looking at individuals. What I have seen today is that most of the, let's say, startup looking into HR don't really think of how can we help people to better design their career. And this is what, Kaatch is really about, is how can we solve the unemployment and what we have to do with that. And we really don't care about being called a marketplace or being called ATS, whatever it is. We are here to solve the unemployment issue.
Yeah. And look, that's why I wanted to have you on. If anyone's kind of listening in going, well, this isn't Insurtech. It's like, well, one, we're going to talk about your background in a second, which is very insurance focused. And secondly, I must have given 10 or been part of a panel or given a talk or been asked to speak on this issue 10 times in the last 3 years. And it's always the topic we talk about. It's like allowing people to have career mobility. What do we do with redeployment of talent? And then there's some very specific things that the insurance industry is struggling with in this area. So I think it's a really important thing to talk about, and particularly because some of the clients you're looking to work with will be some of these kind of Insurtech clients. But let's kind of do a segue into that. So because you have a background in insurance, this is how we first got to know each other. It wasn't in your current role. It was when in your previous role. So probably good to give everyone a bit of context. So when we start talking about insurance, they were like, who is this guy? Why has he got so much to say about insurance?
Well, to this, I think the first thing I need to say that I always been listening to your podcast. You guys, like, people need to know that I'm a heavy listener to the podcast. And the first time we met was in London, and we went together to a very nice restaurant that I always recommend to anyone. I won't tell the name now because then the list is going to be too huge when I go there. But the people that have us, they will remember we did it. So we met in the insurance industry. I do remember listening to your podcast and thinking that, maybe one day I will be spending time with you. But I was sure that it would be for me to come and speak about Insurtech. So just to give a bit more of the background. So I used to work for RGA, the reinsurance organization company, and I was, working as innovation director for Europe, Middle East and Africa. Great colleagues, great works. We worked with startup. We had a kind of for CVC as well. So that's on my background. I also had some other experience in insurance, working in media and etc. But really, I always thought that I would be building an Insurtech. But when the moment came, I started thinking of what exactly I want to solve. And one thing that I've seen with Insurtech, so with all my due respect to all of the listener in Insurtech space, but I always thought of one thing that Tony Fadell said, I think is the guy from Ape. And he will say that it is very hard to kind of find a solution or to build a solution to a problem that most of the people don't see or most of the people don't care. And this is what I found as a lot with insurance is that you want to do something, you want to build something, but most of the user that you want to go because I've always been thinking of kind of a direct to customer solution. People don't really care about it. So I was like, oh, let's think of something that has another perspective and impact. And that's why I arrived into the HR tech.
I think that's yeah, I love that. I think that's some of the issues we've seen with some of the insurtechs that probably haven't made it, or and that's look, I'm not being disparaging at all, but some of the things that we see, I think it's a neat solution or solving a problem. But the question I ask is like, does anyone care enough? Is it a big enough problem? Like, does anyone care enough? And in fairness, and one of the things I would challenge on part of this conversation that we're going to have, I really want to know whether people really care about this issue. Because it's like when people speak to me about, Alex, what can we do about DE&I? And I'm like, well, you could do these. Let's say there's some really quick wins that you can do about addressing that kind of issue in your organization. I just don't see businesses doing it. So I'm either like, let's either stop talking about it or let's do it. But let's not have a lot of flag waving about sort of things that we say we're gonna do. So but I think you've touched on something, HR tech, particularly kind of onboarding, particularly kind of helping people's career mobility, and then people managing their careers as well. So give us some context, because you started talking to me about some data. In Spain, you shared this really shocking number with me. But how big is the problem that we're trying to solve when we're looking for, and I know you're touching on a few issues, but just give us some kind of numbers and context.
Yeah, perfect. I think that what I would also explain first is that when we talk about the HR market and talking about talent recruitment and all of that, it's a massive business. So we talk about a market of 700 billion, I think, in recruiting. So that's always it's very important to understand that. And when we talk about unemployment issue, I'm not going to talk about worldwide information, but I look into Spain. I'm based in Madrid, and we're starting in Spain our solution. There's one thing that's really I found it very alarming is looking into the youth in the Spanish market, for example. We see that it's about 28% the rate of unemployment for young people in Spain, which is very, very shocking. And if we even look into the startup world and looking more, this is more like European things. The layoff recently in the startup world regarding Europe, we're talking about 45,000 people that have been affected by this, which is really a massive number. So we see more and more in the startup space, a lot of startup going silent into layoff, a lot of startup going silent into, shutting down. And this is something that always kind of get in my mind to like, what exactly can we do to solve this? Obviously, you cannot help company to not fail. You cannot do that, but you could do something positive to help the people that find themselves being laid off. Because most of the time they're just like, oh, what do I do now? What is the next things for me? So the problem is very, very important to solve when you talk about youth, but maybe if you move into other population, like more senior people and etc., we'll also find crazy number around that. And I think this is a way for us to think of what can we provide and what we can do. So thinking of this, one of the key solutions that we have is we do have career designers. So we don't like to say coach or mentors. We like to say career designers, because those are the people that could help you to think better and to better design the career that you want to do, right? So this is one of the things that we provide to the people coming to our platform to support them with the next steps.
Yeah, some shocking statistics there. And I think that's why I thought this was timely to do. And we've seen lots of startups unfortunately fail. A lot of people, what we call like zombie companies that can't raise because the numbers aren't there, but they're still kind of ticking along because there's a little bit of runway left, and it leaves people kind of who've made probably quite big leaps of faith in this bit of nowhere land where it's quite difficult for them to get back into work, and also just it's an unsettling time. It's a very
Yeah.
difficult thing for people to go through. I'm interested to see, because a lot of the big companies manage this well. They'll go to one big HR organizations and they'll, I wouldn't say they necessarily manage it well, but they'll have facilities to do that. So whether it's
Yeah.
their own internal HR team or they'll use kind of external sort of offboarding. But you're particularly looking to support the startup community. Like, what is specifically their unique challenges around this sort of situation?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you mentioned well how big organization works. So usually, big organization, we go to a big player to say, "Oh, we have this. Unfortunately, there's 20 people leaving, and then you have to create a program for us, which is called outplacement or offboarding." But we're looking at the startup space. Most of the time, they don't know what to do and what exactly they can provide to the people. And also, the big organization that's supporting an outplacement, they are very traditional. What they have created a specific block. So when you arrive, they kind of give, the same to everyone. And we thought that is different when we talk about, like the startup employees, the way they think, what they want to do, their motivation, and etc. So the first thing we have done is like, how can we change our placement industry? How can we make it more flexible, more personalized? So the way it works is that when a startup is going to do a layoff, one thing they can do on our platform at absolutely no cost is to create the talent directory. I don't know if you remember Airbnb having issues with employees and etc. They have done this. So we kind of get inspired by this, and we allows any startup today to create a talent directory on our platform, meaning that to say, we're creating a list which is Meet My Talent, and those all of the people being affected that are there, and allowing other organizations also at absolutely no cost to come on our platform, have a look to this talent, and be able to source as well from the listing. So that's the first solution that we're providing. The second one is to understand what more we can do, and it's like, okay, there's a offboarding. How can we support the person? So first, we don't just take the person and provide him a coach, and that's it. But the first thing we do is that there's a conversation. So we talk about half an hour with a career designer to understand what is the path that the person want to be following. So some people will say, I want to be a founder. Some other will say, no, I want to do what we call comeback, which means that I want to do the same job in the same industry. And then other will say, I have seen the job that I've done, I have seen the industry, I want to switch. So we have three paths for the people to say, okay, that's a founder track. This is the comeback one, and then the switch one. So we already kind of better understand what the person needs and what type of support they can provide it. Also, the other difference is that we don't give you only one coach to go with you, but we do understand that there's maybe some coaches are very much specialized in one thing that you need to do. That could be your personal branding, even if I don't like the term of personal branding. I don't think people are brands. Anyway, that's another topic for conversation. So we will have someone supporting you into this. So we bring in kind of flexibility into the offboarding, and also for the startup, they have a specific budget to support the person. We can also make it different. So maybe the employee leaving needs coaching plus, I don't know, 1 week in Bali. I'm just making a joke around that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's what we have to design. If your budget is 3K to do it, you don't care if it is 3K on coaching, or if it is 1K into coaching and then 1K because you're doing yoga and another one because you're buying a bicycle. We don't care. We need to help the person to come back to the market. And this is what we want to change and how we want to do that.
Yeah, I love so much of that. I mean, I think people don't realize how effective things like that talent directory are. So because we're well known in the Insurtech space, startup and scale up space, we have been there, and some people have gone, can you help? And so, I remember one specific incident where they had to lay off about 10 people, and it was across product, customer success, and unfortunately it was just someone in the business development team. We ended up placing 3 people off that list into different businesses. I think people forget that is that when these layoffs happen, it's not a comment on the quality of the people. It's not a comment that good people get laid off, like because they're the last in the door, or just because their department is under pressure. And and I think sometimes that's why people want to do it quietly. That there's like almost a shame about it. There's a shame for both sides. So like the startup doesn't want to be seen to lay people off because they get embarrassed that they've not grown how they wanted to. And the people involved don't really want people to know they've been laid off because they kind of want to just move on and move on with their life. But those talent directories are massive. And, look, we're not even the most effective at that because, we're a retained search firm. We have to work on very specific projects, but we just happen to be able to kind of work with some clients that could help. What each individual needs in that situation is I imagine, very, very different. I mean, I would be like, get me a job tomorrow. I want to get going, I think.
Exactly.
I have been in that situation, and that's kind of what I would have thought. But then I actually ended up launching my own business. So
But if you think about it, you end up building your business. And what would have been useful for you at that point is someone to say, okay, we will provide you a coach. But when I say coach, I really like to say better say career designer, which is going to help you into the business that you want to build. But it's going to help you maybe with 1 or 2 sessions and then realize that the business they want to build is maybe under HR space. Therefore, they need to switch you to someone that is specialized in HR space. So if you had like the 10 hours or 20 hours, right, of support into how you build a business, what are the things that you need? What are the contacts that you need? Whether than bringing you on a platform, showing you a lot of like, how do you do your CV? Like no entrepreneur cares about doing the CV, right? How do you do your LinkedIn page? This is not what someone needs if it said that, oh, I've just been left and I need to build a company. And the company could be building a startup, so a tech one. So you need someone specialized into tech startup to help you to understand what exactly it means. And if the business is like, oh, I want to be like, a bakery, right? Yeah, let's do that. Let's support you with someone that has experience into this. So it doesn't need to be like a proper coach, certified coach as we understand it, but it could be someone that understands your needs and provide a solution to that. And this is what I want to say to the startup today is that onboarding is amazing, it's great. You make great picture on LinkedIn about the onboarding of new staff, but also care about the people leaving because they can come back, obviously, but also they could be your partner in the future. And those people deserve to be treated perfectly because they have spent time helping you to build a business and helping you to achieve your dream.
No, I very much agree with that. The other part of the thing you mentioned there was this kind of like career design element, and bringing it back to insurance. A thing that I've talked about a lot is insurance is very bad at career mobility. I always joke that I didn't realise when I was signing up to work in claims that I would never be allowed to work in anything other than claims because I just happened to walk into this role. And now that's an oversimplification, and of course I wasn't in the insurance industry that long, but why do you think insurance is so bad at sort of career mobility? Because it's particularly bad at it, I think.
I think insurance struggle in the sense that like you could have people working in insurance for 30 years but only doing the same things, but just making more money, right? So I think the fact that the industry pays well and pays even better when you have experience make people, like they stay into what they do. The only people that we see kind of career mobility are usually like the actuaries that ends up being the CEOs or the CFOs end up being the CEOs. But you don't see other position in insurance moving to other department. I think this is wrong. We need to kind of change the mentality into that, understand that people can learn fast and very quickly. I unfortunately don't remember the exact numbers, but like if you were looking into 20 years or 30 years ago, one of the skills that you had could help you to still working for the next 40 years. And I think today, if you look at the skills that you know today, you might be available to work and do what you do for the next maybe 3 years only. I remember when I was working at RGA, like ChatGPT came up with everyone and etc. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And I was seeing my friends using it, ChatGPT and startup and etc. Today I'm working on a startup. There's absolutely no way for me to spend more than 4 hours without using ChatGPT. So the skills are changing and involving a lot. And I think this is the same for the career of people. We need to be able to have people with hybrid, career. People spending maybe 2 years, 3 years into a role, they're moving with something else. That would only augment the intelligence of the company. But to be able to do that, we need to have the leaders of the organization to think the same way, but also the recruitment team that usually I think one thing I realized was like the talent acquisition team in organization, they're really, really innovative people, but they don't have this reputation. When we do have issues, it's really like the hiring managers that want to have people from the same schools and
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, right? So a lot of time people just like, oh, the HR team are like, oh, they don't know whatever, and et cetera. It's maybe because for the past 10 years, you have been blocking them to think differently. So I guess the hiring managers, so I'm calling all of the managers to think differently, to say, maybe someone has been an actuary, but he could do marketing today, right? Because new skills come, it has to be trained, and it can switch to something different. But also telling to people that if you have been working in claims, the most important thing is that you understand insurance. You could easily maybe not move into actuary because you need specific diplomas for that, but you could move into marketing. You could move into HR. Look at what you're doing today, right? The Premier League level that you're providing into the HR space.
I'll have to leave that without comment. But yeah, but I mean, I was thinking as you were going, I had a conversation with my team this morning. So I've got two new people with me. They're really experienced. You know, we only hire experienced people in our business. But the first thing we do is, right, well, everything you know about recruitment isn't wrong, but we do it slightly differently. And you know, a big part of what we do now. When I started, you know, recruitment has this reputation, and it's true. It was a sales job. And it was about picking up the phone, and it was about building relationships, and it was about pressing the flesh and going for drinks. And probably the kind of networking element is still there, but I would say that it's concentrated to, we don't have lots of meetings, you know, like going to meet clients is, you know, even clients don't particularly want that a lot of the time. They're like, what?
Yeah.
You want me to meet in person for an hour? No one's got the time. But the big thing is that I never thought I'd be doing this. I didn't think I'd have to edit video. I didn't know I'd have to be a media savvy. I thought I just would spend my whole life building relationships over the phone and going to meet people in person. And this is just a new skill that we've learned. And you know, AI has come into our world as well. Like we've got some AI sourcing tools. You know, that's going to expand, and the softer skills become more important. But it's a very different role to the role that I had when I started. And that was an industry that didn't look like it was ever going to change. But actually, the skills now are like creativity, having an open mind, you know, like those skills are kind of what matters. And actually, this kind of old school banging the phone, shoving CVs at people is not really the way. But your point, I thought, was really interesting about the open-mindedness of hiring managers, because that is where we have a problem.
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I, I'll tell you a very brief. I won't drop them in it, but there was an innovation team that lost their head of, and they asked five people, and apparently all five of them said that we were the right business to help them out. So, which was very nice to hear. So we go into this meeting. It's so very insurance, traditional insurance. I get looked up and down because, you know, even being more smart casual, I've got my trainers on. I'm like not quite dressed like I should be in this corporate office. And I get asked one question, which is like, how do other people build innovation teams? And I start sort of answering the question and go, you know, different structures, etc. And they said, yeah, but we're not going to do it like that. And they interrupted me three times to say, yeah, but we're not doing it like that. And I said, okay, but the question you've asked me is
How
how do
do
other
other people?
people do it, right? And I'm answering that question. But it was so clear. It was like, we are going to do this in one specific way, and we are only going to hire someone that wants to think like this. There wasn't any room for negotiation, and it included me. And I was there about 15 minutes and looked me up and down and went,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
great.
think I'm for them. And it was really, really funny, but it was like so very much like we were told that they were told, right, we're the innovative people that can help you. They asked for innovative people that can help them. And actually what they wanted when they were going to hire the person was not that at all. So it's very much about, I think, allowing people to be creative, allowing people to be mobile, but unless you support that with a culture of being brave in hiring, as in allowing people to move, allowing people to make mistakes, probably, then you've got no chance. I wanted to talk to you about these mentors. You mentioned them earlier, different mentors. How do you select mentors? How do you find them? Because I suspect lots of people listening would probably like to be involved if they've got some value to add.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, as mentioned, we want to be flexible. We want to be personalized. So that's why we don't like the concept of coach, because it means that it's someone certified that went to school to learn how to train people or speak to people whatsoever. For us, it's more like, let's say we have a startup layoff, right? They have 10 people, and one of the person is a product manager, and he said, "Oh, I want to do like the comeback program where I want to go back and work as a product manager again." how can you help me? And the startup that I like, or the type of company I like, is this level. So what we're going to do is go and fetch the right people that work in this specific startup and help him to understand what he needs and how he needs it, and etc. So it's more like very driven by the need of someone, rather than having a bunch of mentors, everywhere. We can always have kind of specific career designers. Those are the people that we know for a long time and we train. Something I haven't mentioned, but for the past 5 years, I've been doing pro bono, helping people to find, a better position in their career and etc. So I think I helped like over 30 people in finding new jobs and new opportunities in the last years. So I did understand very well what are the needs and how we can really help people. And in some situation, I was the right person to support. And some other situation, I needed to have someone else that is more specialized in the industry, more specialized in the role to support. And this is what we want to do. So it's more us going to the people and say, hey, would you be able to have a 1 hour or 2 hour conversation with one of the person that we're supporting today, because you want to work in your industry? This is how it is going to work for us.
Mm. Yeah, I think yeah, because the mentoring stuff that I've seen where it doesn't work for me, and I'm someone I've got a mentor now, and I've had mentors in the past, but I was with this. There's a couple of recruitment specific like bodies that support you, and they stuck me with this guy, and he was brilliant, but he was really good if I had a 50-person recruitment business trying to make it a 100-person recruitment business.
Yeah,
I had a 4-person recruitment business, and he didn't know how to do that at all. He'd never been that
exactly.
guy. Like he wasn't that
Absolutely.
guy. He was the guy that it gets you from 50 to 100 and probably beyond. But he wasn't the guy that knew how to grappily build a sort of take me to 4 to 10, which is probably step one. So it was on paper it looked right, but subtly it was like, what are the challenges I'm having? They were the wrong person. So I think it's important.
Exactly. It's the same when you build a startup. You have so many, like executive people coming to you and say, "Oh, I could be your advisor," and etc.
Mm.
But then you start to speak about, I don't know, any new tools that
Yeah.
early stage startup, almost pre-revenue needs,
Yeah.
and the person is totally lost, because the
Yeah.
person is specialized in working with a Series D, whatever, with 100 millions revenue, whatever it is, right? So we need
Mm.
to make sure that we are personalized and we are flexible. It is true that one thing that we do see that we're going to be generating specific mentors is one solution I would spoke about is the return to work, right?
Okay.
Because when talking about onboarding, offboarding, and taking care of people, there's also a huge situation coming on. It's all of those people that have had to pause their career just because they want to be in Bali. That's the reality.
Mm.
But
Hmm.
some people pause their career because it just, he's a dad or she's a mom, and then she paused for 2 years for XYZ reason. And some people just because they needed to take care of their parents, for example, or take care
Mm.
of the kids for XYZ reason, or it could be a
Mm.
medical reason. How do we support the people to come back? Like, how do we do the return to work program? And on that specific one, we do have specific coaches that are specialized into like psychology and all of that to support the person in this regard, because we know that there's kind of a mental support and motivation that needs to be done, and leveraging some coaching techniques to really support the person. So in that regard,
Mm.
we do have this flexibility into going into the coach and more certified people.
Mm. The returning to work is difficult. We find it really challenging in our industry. You know, if we find someone that's got all the skills, but they've been out of
Yeah,
work for 2 years for whatever reason, like you say, the variety of reasons. I spoke to a guy the other day that, had been looking after his parents. I speak to people that have taken time out to look after their mental health, and they've taken a year out. And I find that I'm speaking broadly, but the insurance industry, I think this is largely a very UK thing. But I think the insurance industry is not good at accommodating those people. Like it's like we treat it like in 2 years they've lost everything in terms of kind of value and knowledge because they've been out of the game.
and it's
Um,
yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's super
yeah,
funny
sure.
for an industry that hasn't changed for 40 years, right?
Yeah, yes,
Or even
yes.
100 years. We all do
Yeah.
the same thing. So, like the person, like an actuary that is out of the market for even 10 years, when he comes back, he has the good training, the right team supporting. I'm sure he can perform as well. And I'm even sure he can outperform as well. So we just need to have, once again, the mentality to say, we do understand that life happens, which means that we need to take care of the specific situation. I'm always amazed by the difficulty that some organizations have when someone go on maternity leaves and come back and, oh, this is a mess. We have been, working for years and years and years, and then, like, I don't know, 1,000 years we've been working. Humans have kids for for the whole life. Why is it the situation? Why is it complex for us to think of a better way to have someone returning to work? I think it's just a mentality. Obviously, I'm being maybe too nice in my thinking or whatsoever, but this is what we want to build and solve. That's why I was saying to you that we are not going to define ourselves as a marketplace for human resources or at this AI startup doing XYZ. We define ourselves as a company that care about unemployment, that care about companies to find the right people. Because this one topic that we haven't talked about is the unfilled roles as well. So in the meantime, we have unemployment, but again, on the same situation, we do have unfilled role happening as well. So we have seen it in Spain, for example, in tech. I think we're talking about 100,000 roles last year that has been unfilled. And we're expecting by 2030 to have 1 million more people in the Spanish market working in technology. We are very far from that. How do we change that? How do we help the unemployed people to find the jobs there? How do we train them? How we show that we open to them? But also, how do we open to overseas candidates, right? I know in the UK is a difficulty now with all the visa situation, etc. But I know Europe has to fight and has to be able to look into how do we transform ourselves into a talent place? Like how do we bring people from Argentina? How do we bring people from Cameroon? How do we bring people from South Africa? How do we make sure that the unfilled roles are being covered by the right talent and we start to be overseas into our strategy? And all of this is what we want to be solving.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I was reading an article the other day about it was about Spain actually, and it was about how average salaries have gone up because of the international. You can take remote work anywhere in the world now, and the 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 challenges for that are difficult because you're now in an international marketplace for talent. You're now in an international competition for roles as well. But then you see these pockets, and we see this with our own clients. We see this in the US all the time. Like, I've got probably 5 or 6 clients that have got 4 or 5 open vacancies each, all in technology, because they're looking for a very specific skill that they don't have. So
Yeah,
it's addressing that, and there are short-term solutions, which is probably nearshore, offshore talent solutions. There's some kind of like looking externally into different countries and bringing that talent over. But there also has to be some longer-term solutions, about training and development, and that's something
absolutely.
that's difficult when you're a small business, and that's why services like this are important. Emmanuel, we could talk about this all day, and I'd love to, but I'm conscious of our
Absolutely.
time. But what I want to do, I thought this was important to kind of talk to the insurance industry about this because I do think it's something we don't do well, but particularly the Insurtech startup space. If people are looking to work with you, if they want to find out more, what's the best way to connect with you? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, I think it's quite easy. On LinkedIn, I always reply unless you're a bot, and sometimes I reply and I realize it was a bot. But that's okay. So I will, yeah, easy to find on LinkedIn. Also, we have our website, which is Kaatch, so KAATCH .co, where you can find me or just drop me a note on LinkedIn. I always reply.
Amazing. Emmanuel, thank you. Really good to see you again, and really appreciate you being a guest on the podcast.
Amazing. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, bud.